I am a 30-year-old married woman. I would like to talk about family issues that I have been dealing with since childhood. Background is somewhat complex and requires a lot of time to unravel. First of all, I have memories of always feeling like a troublemaker in my family. On the other hand, my older sister Catherine was always the eternal golden child for our family. She has blonde hair and blue eyes, looking a lot like our mother. In contrast, I inherited brown eyes and brown hair from my great-grandmother on my father's side. As you can see, I am the only one who is not blonde. Although I grew up in a family of 4, my childhood felt isolating. Rather than easing this feeling, my parents sometimes even accentuated it. For instance, they joked about doing a DNA test to see if I was really their child. It seemed like they were suggesting that joking about such a thing with a young child was perfectly normal, even though they laughed it off as just a joke. It was obvious who they favored. Catherine was treated like a cute, perfect angel. In comparison, I felt like an unnecessary presence to the family. From a young age, I realized there were things I could never attain. The support and affection Catherine received were hardly ever extended to me, and I was essentially isolated. This situation only worsened when I entered high school. My parents were proud of Catherine's beauty and popularity and seemed satisfied with that. Meanwhile, I had to find my own way to survive. I came to terms with not needing to focus on building a strong bond with my family and grew from that. It wasn't so much anger towards Catherine herself, but smoldering resentment towards our parents for doting on her and pushing me into the shadows. Therefore, I set my sights on attending college as a goal in my life. I believed that going to college would free me from my parents' control. I eagerly awaited that day. But reality was not so sweet. Due to financial issues, I couldn't afford to live on my own and had to commute from home to save money. Living at home was suffocating, and my mother always nagged me. Each time I was told how much my parents were sacrificing for me, as if I had other options, my frustration only grew. Eventually, I found a good job and was able to move out, but the pressure I had felt up to that point continued to linger. Then, 3 years ago, I was finally able to distance myself from my family by marrying Jason. However, I soon realized that my husband and his family highly valued family ties, which was a stark contrast to my values. Jason and his family kept emphasizing that family is family, no matter the flaws. As a result, I had no choice but to go along with their views. This led me to start sending money to my parents every month as financial support. Even though they didn't particularly appreciate or care for me, I continued out of a sense of guilt. Meanwhile, Catherine had married a wealthy man years ago and continued to lead a life where she got everything she wanted. This fact reminded me that she had always been the special one in the family. I had heard that her husband was very kind to her. I wasn't particularly surprised when it came out that Catherine had had an affair with an unknown man just a year into her marriage. However, her husband didn't just let it slide, and they divorced a few months ago. Since the divorce was due to the affair, he cleverly set the terms of the settlement so that Catherine was left with almost nothing. Since then, my mother has been making efforts to support Catherine and has been persistently asking for my help to share the burden. Catherine invited me to go on a vacation with her to heal from her post-divorce sadness. Of course, I refused. I couldn't understand her mentality of making others pay for her mistakes. After all, I have worked hard and built my own life. However, my husband Jason had a different opinion. It seems he has a soft spot for Catherine. She has always been attractive, and every time we visited my parents' house, Jason would show a comforting attitude towards her. Even when I expressed my discomfort, Jason dismissed it as just being caring, leading to several arguments. Then, just last month, I found out that Catherine had gone on her healing vacation At that moment, I felt an indescribable shock. I knew neither Catherine nor our parents had enough money. Still, I suspected someone had financially supported her, though I wanted to believe otherwise. But I couldn't shake off a certain unease, so I quietly watched the situation. One day, I accidentally overheard Jason talking on the phone with my mother. I didn't hear the entire conversation clearly, but it was enough to understand the situation. Jason had been financially supporting Catherine without consulting me. Can you believe he did this without discussing it with me? Can you imagine this betrayal? The weight of the betrayal I felt is hard to express in words. He not only disregarded my feelings, but also acted against my wishes. For someone who has never shown me respect, filled with anger, I took a few days to calm down before finally deciding to confront him. I had expected more trustworthy behavior from him. After all, he is my husband. But what he said was an excuse that, "Your mother strongly asked me to help." In short, he ended up funding my sister's vacation because he couldn't refuse my mother's request. And he added the usual excuse that families help each other. I never thought he would betray my trust like this. I was truly hurt. The least he could have done, even if I had disagreed, was to be honest with me about his decision. But it seemed he had no intention of telling me, unless I found out. Therefore, I was cold towards him for a while. I was deeply disappointed in his actions. I couldn't help but doubt whether he truly respected me as a wife and partner. I was deeply hurt that he completely disregarded my feelings, but I thought continuing to be cold would only worsen the situation. Recently, I've started to notice how often Jason is on his phone. Nearly always carries his phone around and seems guarded. He acts as if I'm not interested in him and only talks when necessary, perhaps thinking I haven't noticed anything, but I'm not that oblivious. I once again saw him talking on the phone with someone, and it was not my mother he was speaking to, but Catherine. I only caught part of their conversation, but it felt different from the usual in-law interactions. I won't go into details, but I could hear my husband arguing with her over the phone, and their manner of speaking didn't seem like the usual distance of in-laws, but rather more intimate. And so things started to change, little by little. It seemed very unnatural how much empathy he showed for her, and that he valued my family's opinions over my own thoughts. I began to feel that something bigger was going on without my knowledge. His excessive interest in my sister is abnormal. He has become more sympathetic towards her than ever before. Now it all seems to make sense. Although I don't have concrete proof, everything appears consistent to me. At that point, I felt I couldn't leave things as they were any longer, so I decided to seek help from a trustworthy lawyer. Without telling Jason or anyone else, I wanted to solve the problem at my own pace, and I was prepared to reveal everything, believing that my lawyer would support me. By the time dinner arrived, I was ready. I invited my parents and Catherine for a meal, and I included Jason as well. Thanks to the presence of my lawyer, I managed to stay calm. My parents and Catherine seemed to be enjoying themselves as usual, or they probably thought I was just whimsically calling people together for fun. As for Jason, he looked noticeably tense. He had probably predicted what I was going to do already. Honestly, he was the smartest and fastest one in the family to sense any kind of forewarning. After dinner, I brought up the topic of Catherine's vacation. Looking Jason straight in the eye, I pressed Catherine on how she had managed to pay for it. My parents, who had just been laughing happily with her minutes earlier, fell silent instantly. Jason appeared even more tense, so I stared at him and asked sarcastically, "What do you think?" Then I threw the real question at him. There was something between him and Catherine. He looked surprised, but tried to dodge the question by saying, "My judgment was distorted by family influence. My parents said he was just being kind and that I was overreacting." Meanwhile, Catherine said I was being paranoid and quite delusional, but I was not about to give up. My lawyer stepped in and made it clear that I was not backing down. Their upset reactions confirmed to me that their actions were betraying my trust. The presence of the lawyer, which my parents had not anticipated at all, must have further unsettled them. My parents tried to make me retract my statements by saying they were just being kind, but I told them to stop trying to manipulate me and to stop defending my sister, who has never shown me respect. I said I could no longer endure being treated as the family victim. Jason tried to say, "We're just helping because we're family," but I responded, "If you can't understand why I'm hurt, then you really don't understand me. At least I'm not foolish enough to not see what's going on." I told them that I would no longer be manipulated needlessly, and that I am currently considering my options. If he wants to defend my family and make me look weak, then he should stay with them, but I am taking measures to protect myself. I also told them that I am prepared to file for divorce. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly, and my mother and Catherine clearly showed their anger. Catherine accused me of crossing a line with her ex-husband and acted as if she was the one deeply hurt. She behaved as if I had betrayed the family, but I have not. I understand fully. I realized that I could finally control my own life, but I also understood that they could not accept it. Now, I am ready to move on. I have ended my past of resisting myself for the family. I will no longer submit for people who have never shown me sincere compassion or respect. I barely speak to Jason now. In fact, he has left the house and is living with a cousin nearby. I told him that our marriage was over. Considering everything that has happened, no one can even bring themselves to talk about it. My trust in him is completely gone, and I am fully aware of that fact. I feel that I can never go back to how things were. I thought marrying him would allow me to build a new life with someone who cherishes me, but now I am faced with the harsh reality that this hope will never be fulfilled. That is enough for me. I regret not ending this relationship sooner. I am seriously considering cutting off all ties with my parents and Catherine. It might seem odd, but I plan to continue sending them money every month. The issues of being taught to devalue myself over many years are not something that can be resolved overnight. For my own consolation, I try to think that I no longer need to see my parents. It's just out of a sense of obligation. They are getting older. At least if they pass away, no one can blame me for abandoning my parents. They will take my money, and I accept that as compensation for my peace of mind. If I stop sending money, when my parents pass away, other relatives will surely blame me. Understanding that continuing to involve them in my life is nothing but suffering is painful. But I get it. Someday, they might realize how much pain they have caused me. But I can't keep waiting for that moment. Now is the time to prioritize my happiness. By talking directly with Jason and having individual conversations with family members, I was able to experience a moment of healing for the first time. Jason left the house immediately after I told him I had decided to divorce. It was a great relief for me. At least I can have a time without having to see a face I don't want to see every day. I was able to take a step toward regaining myself. My parents and Catherine continued their days as if nothing had happened, because I hadn't said anything or made it public. Although I couldn't even take a rest, my parents are still taking money from me. Some friends had suggested that I include an infidelity clause in a prenuptial agreement before marrying Jason. I am grateful for that now. However, having a prenuptial agreement doesn't make it easy to demand anything from Jason. The problem is that there is no clear evidence that he cheated. I have always had suspicions about him and Catherine, but there's no evidence that he cheated just because he put effort into helping her. Honestly, I no longer have the energy to fight. I'm at my physical and mental limits. I just want to distance myself a little from the toxicity of my family. Maybe he wasn't physically unfaithful, Perhaps just influenced by my mother and Catherine. Honestly, it's unclear. In my heart, I don't want to face the reality that he could have betrayed me. However, an event made me doubt everything again. A few days ago, I received a message on social media from Catherine's ex-husband. We weren't close, so I was surprised to get a message from him. His message was brief and vague, simply stating, "Please check." Honestly, I was terrified to accept it. I'm meeting him soon, and I'm anxious about what unbearable things he might say. And what if the issue is more serious than I anticipated? Despite my efforts to recover, I feel like everything is about to collapse again. I've decided to meet him in a public place just in case. I asked a few close friends to come with me. I don't have the courage to face this alone. I don't know what awaits, but now I need to find out. To move forward, I must clarify this now. However, what he told me was worse than I expected. Since then, I've been emotionally devastated. But despite the difficulty in articulating this, I feel I must speak out for my sake and for others. Firstly, Catherine's ex-husband began to suspect something when he accidentally found evidence of an affair between Jason and Catherine. After some deliberation and seeing how my family treated me, he decided I had the right to know the truth. He handed me some documents. Included were screenshots of text messages Catherine had sent a few months ago. These were related to the amount Jason had paid. It was no coincidence. It was not out of kindness or misguided sympathy, but rather a financial arrangement to keep her quiet. Jason was pressuring Catherine to keep silent, to prevent her from telling me about the affair. My husband, whom I trusted, was paying my sister to protect their dirty secret instead of our relationship. To make matters worse, I was told by Catherine's ex-husband that my parents had known about the affair between my husband and Catherine for a long time. I had moments of doubt, but now everything felt clear. I regretted not noticing the signs that were there. After hearing this truth, I spent hours crying in the car about the betrayal by my family. The shock was tremendous. I didn't know where to start or how to deal with my husband, sister, and parents, but if they thought I could easily accept this fact, they were greatly mistaken. I'm done being treated this way. I've decided there's no need to feel sympathy for them anymore. Previously, I had ignored him due to a lack of evidence to move forward. But now that I have solid proof, I intend to use every available means to ensure he can't escape. Thanks to the prenuptial agreement, he originally didn't have many rights. But now, I want him to take responsibility for his actions. After meeting with Catherine's ex-husband, I've been in considerable turmoil. I've been unable to eat or sleep properly, betrayed by my family and soon-to-be ex-husband. It wasn't an easy journey, but I've slowly been making sense of the situation. First, I decided to completely cut off financial ties with my parents. I've stopped giving them allowances, covering their bills, and feeling any obligation toward their actions. Given what I've learned, I can't entertain any expectations from them again. Of course, they did not take this well. My mother and Catherine seemed especially unable to accept this fact. Then they sent me emails and messages. The second they didn't back down, I contacted the police. My lawyer promptly proceeded with a restraining order application. Now they can't legally come near me or contact me. So far, they haven't made anything public. They seem to have finally understood that if they try to contact me again, I can further destroy their lives. Thanks to the restraining order, they already feel significant humiliation, and they are embarrassed for others to know. Hopefully that will continue. The evidence I have isn't strong enough to prevent Jason from dragging out various proceedings. He's probably hoping that by taking his time, I will get tired and compromise. But I won't give in this time. Ignoring it is no longer an option. Considering what he has done, I can't let things stay as they are. I'm exhausted, but remembering how he lied and betrayed me daily, I keep my resolve strong while feeling overwhelmed. Supported by a few old friends, I've been rediscovering hobbies and interests that entertain me. It's never easy, and there are tough days. But I keep encouraging myself to get out of this difficult situation. This year has been a long and challenging journey, but ultimately, supported by the prenuptial agreement and evidence of his infidelity, I was able to achieve victory. There were moments when Jason seemed to feel some regret over what he lost. But remembering the past betrayals and lies, those feelings quickly faded. The last I heard, Jason was trying to recover by working multiple jobs and immersing himself in work. At the time, I thought I would never recover from such deep betrayal, but since then, I've been living valuing my feelings. Needless to say, therapy brought significant changes, teaching me how to maintain boundaries, identify harmful behaviors, and prioritize my health. Thus, I was able to rediscover what truly brings me happiness.